Hello Year 9, hope you are okay. I've got a starter for you first based on yesterday's lesson. I hope you coped okay with that. It's, as I said yesterday, I kept saying it, didn't I? It's not particularly hard, but it's just wordy, isn't it? So just pause the video at this point, have a go at this question. Okay, so Isabella's got 5 more books than Emma, x plus 5. Laura has 3 fewer books than Emma, x take away 3. Did you read this one carefully though? Scarlett has twice as many books, not as Emma, but as Isabel. So Isabel's got x plus 5 books, so Scarlett's got twice as much. So you could write this using brackets. Or you could have just doubled x and doubled 5. Either of those would have been correct, although if you wrote it like that, you did actually need to expand it to multiply out the brackets to get that. So we've now got to write an expression for the total number of books, and we mustn't forget Emma in that. So we've got Emma, Isabel, Laura, and Scarlett. So that's Emma was x, Isabel x plus 5, Laura x minus 3, and Scarlett 2x plus 10. We're adding those together, numbers and letters separately. So I've got an x, an x, an x, and 2 x's. Happy that's 5 x's. And I've got 5, take away 3, that's 2, plus 10, plus 12. 5x plus 12 was the answer. Well done if you got that correct. Okay, so today we're moving on from algebra, and the next topic is to do with fractions and percentages. I'm actually recording this video on Monday. I got the date wrong, but it's 12. It's the 12th of the 1st, which, had you noticed, was a palindromic number, 12121. There you go. So we're going to start today with just a little bit of a nudge about the things that I'm assuming you can do with fractions, all of which you will have done at primary school and again in year 7. But, it's worth reminding you about these things. So nothing new today, just a quick recap. So, our objective today, fractions introduction, date's Tuesday the 12th, and I'm going to go through 4 sections. So I'm going to call this section 1. And in each section, I've just got you a number of questions which I'm hoping you could do, although I'm quite happy if it's all a bit rusty and you're going to find it a bit hard. But section 1 is all about equivalent fractions, the idea that fractions which look different can actually have the same value. And in particular, when we get a fraction that can be simplified, we really ought to do that. So pause the video at this point, see if you can answer these questions. I'll come back with the answers in a minute. How'd you get on with that? So the first question is all about this idea that you can change a fraction as long as you multiply the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator by the same thing. So in this question, the top had been doubled, so we had to double the bottom. In this question, the bottom had been multiplied by 4, so we had to multiply the top by 4. And in this question, the bottom, the denominator, had been halved, so we had to halve the numerator. And here, when we want to simplify a fraction, we just ask a simple question. What can I divide the numerator and denominator by? In this case, it was 3. They were both in the 3 times table. How many 3's in 3? How many 3's in 9? In this one, it was 2. I could divide them both by 2. And in this one, a bit trickier, but they are both in the 3 times table. So 12 divided by 3 is 4, 15 divided by 3 is 5. So we get 4/5. Okay, that was section 1. Hopefully we're okay so far. Okay, here's section 2. Section 2 is about mixed numbers and top-heavy fractions, although sometimes they're referred to with a really pompous name, improper fractions, but I always think of them as top-heavy. That's the way I think of it. This is a top-heavy fraction. This is a mixed number. So go on, see if you can write that as a mixed number and these two as top-heavy fractions. I'll pause the video, see if you get on with it. So hopefully you remember that if we're dealing with sevenths, as we are in this fraction, 7 sevenths is 1 whole 1. I've got 12 sevenths, so I've got enough for 1 whole 1, and then I've got 5 extra ones. So we say 12 sevenths is the same as 1 and 5 sevenths. Do you remember doing that before? And then going back the other way, I've drawn a picture. I always talk about cakes. So I've got 4 whole cakes and half a cake. And to write this as a top of a fraction, I want to write it in terms of halves. How many halves have I got? The denominator of the fraction part tells me what fraction I'm dealing with. So I want to ask, how many halves have I got here altogether? So there we go, let's draw them. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 halves. So, and the second one, we're dealing with quarters. Got 6 whole cakes and 3 quarters. So let's split them all into quarters. So I've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 25, 26, 27. 27 quarters. Okay, now this is one of those things which people often find hard, no matter how many times they've done it before. So we may well do a bit of extra practice of this, but I'm going to be asking you for some feedback at the end so you can tell me whether you want practice or not. That's section 2. Okay, section 3 is about this whole idea that when you've got part of something, you can write it as a fraction, as a percentage, or sometimes as a decimal. And if we're going to do that, we need to be able to convert between them. Again, so all of this you will have done before, but probably some time ago. So have a go. Can you answer these 4 questions? Pause the video and I'll come back with answers in just a moment. So I'm wondering with the first one whether there is a degree of sort of remembering, just remembering things. So for example, I'm hoping you can remember that a half as a decimal is 0.5. I don't think there's any, I'm hoping I don't need to teach you a technique for that. 3 quarters, maybe. I'm hoping again, maybe that you'll remember that's 0.75. 7/10, well remember when we're at primary school and we learn about the columns, the first column after the decimal point is the tenths column. So 7/10, 0.7. 2/3 is a fiddly one, isn't it? I mean, it's the thirds are always causes a problem. 1/3, if you recall, is not 0.3, but 0.333333333 as a decimal. So we say it's 0.3 recurring. So 2/3 is 0.6 recurring. Similarly with percentages, I'm wondering if, you might have remembered that a half was 50% and 3 quarters is 75%. I mean, I'm pretty sure, because we do, sort of number starters, that most of you will be clear on this. The other two, yeah, I think a fifth is a fiddly one. Don't forget, 100% means out of 100. So if you take a whole thing and split it of 100 and split it into 5, then that's going to be 20% each. So 1/5 is 20%. And we've already talked about a third as a decimal. So as a percentage, it's 33.3 recurring percent. Percentages as fractions. Well, again, I'm sort of thinking that perhaps 25% you will have just remembered is a quarter. But other than that, you might just remember that percent means out of 100. So 40% is 40 out of 100. And I can simplify that. I can divide them both by 10, so that's 4/10. And I note that I can simplify that again, so that's 2/5. Well done if you got that far. Some of you might have been able to do it straight away, because up here we'd said 20% is 1/5. So 40%, you might have been able to work that out. Similarly, 90%, that's 90 out of 100, and that's 9/10. And decimals to percentages, so 0.5 we've already said is a half, which is 50%, so I'm hoping you remember that. And similarly, 0.75 is 75%. I wonder if anyone put 2% for this one. It's not, it's 20%. This is all a key part of what we need to be able to do in this topic, so we will be revisiting this, and in particular looking at strategies for ones that aren't quite as easy. So I'm pretty sure you all remember that a half is 50%, but what about some harder fractions? And similarly for the other conversions, I think there are some that you remember, but what do you do when it's a harder one that you don't remember? So we'll certainly be visiting this. section 3. One more section to come. Okay, here's the last section. I'm going to go through the first one to begin with. You might be able to put these in order using common sense, which is brilliant, but I do think it's good to have a strategy, and that's one of the things we will look at. So I'm going to write all of these as a decimal. Okay, so 50%, that I know is a decimal, is 0.5. 0.75, already a decimal, 0.75. And 3/10, well, I remember from primary school that the first column after the decimal point is the 10th column, so that's 0.3. And then I'm going to do something I always do when I'm ordering decimals, and that's fill in the gaps. So I've got 2 decimal places here, so I make sure the other 2 numbers have got 2 decimal places. It's really easy then, isn't it? You can easily see that this is the smallest. 0.30 is the smallest. In the question it was 3/10, so 3/10 comes first, because I'm starting with the smallest. Then I can see that this is the next smallest, so 50% comes next. And that means that 0.75 must come last. Now, lots of you will have been able to do that using what you already knew, common sense, sort of knowledge from before. But a strategy is useful if you get stuck and common sense doesn't help you. Have a go at the second one. I'm going to pause it, see what you get on with. Okay, so 4/5, well, that's a bit fiddly, but I know that that's the same as 8/10, so that's 0.8. Again, I'm going for decimals again. Clearly 1 is going to be the biggest, isn't it? So I'm going to write that at the end of my list and not worry about that. 0.5, already a decimal. 60%, so that's 60 out of 100, which simplifies down to 6/10. So that's 0.6. So now they're all written as decimals, so I can compare them, and I didn't have to fill in extra zeros. They're all one decimal place. So the smallest will be 0.5. The next smallest is 0.6, which came from 60%. And then we had 0.8, which was 4/5. So what I'd like you to do for today's lesson is submit something on class charts, but it's not a question. I'm not giving you a question to answer. We've gone through 4 sections sort of leading into our work on fractions and percentages. I'd just like a little bit of feedback as to how you found each of those 4 sections. So you might want to look back at the video to remind yourself. So section 1 was about equivalent fractions and simplifying. Section 2 was the top-heavy fractions and mixed numbers. Section 3 was changing between fractions, decimals, and percentages. Section 4 was putting a mixture of those in order. Now, don't just copy what I've written, but could you tell me how you found each of those sections? So it might be that you were okay with all of them. So you're going to put section 1 okay, section 2 okay, section 3 okay, section 4 okay. It might be that you were okay with sections 1, 2 and 3, but section 4 you need a bit more practice. Or it might be that you felt you needed more practice, and it might be that one of the sections you had absolutely no clue about. I don't know, and you don't have to just use those words. Use your own words to tell me how you feel about those 4 sections. Not an essay, that's plenty, and that just allows me to plan what we're going to do in subsequent lessons. I'm grateful for those of you who I know will give me that feedback straight away. Can I really encourage all of you to get into the habit of using class charts feedback, both when I set you a question and an example like this. Anyway, more of this tomorrow. I will see you then.